Morning and welcome to our fourth interview with our local small business experts. This will be a short weekly discussion that the Economic Alliance will be hosting to discuss topics such as how to start a small business lending, business formation, accounting for your business, and many more. These sessions will be short 5 to 10 question interviews that we will hope will answer some of your most important need to know questions. We will allow for time for questions at the end and encourage you to reach out to the Economic Alliance and/or our industry experts to find out more about any topic that you're interested in learning more about. Today, we will be learning about the small business cottage industry and how to sell at farmers markets. Many people ask, what is a cottage industry and how do they work? Well, the simple answer is that cottage industry refers to small manufacturing units producing goods and services using conventional and low technology methods. An example of the cottage industry is the locally produced handicrafts and textiles, food products, and custom items, which are still the backbone of many rural economies around the globe. Today, we are excited to have Patrick Dunn from Okanogan County Public Health, who will be sharing his wisdom and experience in working with small businesses in the cottage industry and those who sell their products at local farmers markets. I do want to say that Patrick's expertise is going to be more on the line of selling to farmers markets, and we do have information about the cottage industries. So I just wanted to make sure that we clarify that about beforehand. My name is Ronnie Holder-Diefenbach. I always am the worst person to, I always forget to introduce myself. And I'm the executive director for the Economic Alliance. So I will be the person doing the interviews. Welcome, Patrick. Can you share a little bit about your background?
Yes, hi. So my name is Patrick Dunn with Okanogan County Public Health. I've been with this agency for roughly the last 4 years. Got hired on in March of 2018 and been under the wing of a fellow environmental health specialist while I learned the ropes of the food program. And it was probably about a year into it that I was finally able to be able to go on my own and work with plan reviews, routine inspections, complaints, follow-up, all that. As far as my educational background, after high school, I got associates here at Wenatchee Valley and then went off to Washington State University for a natural resource science degree. And yeah.
Now you're back in Okanogan County.
And came back here.
Well, welcome, and we're happy to have you here. Well, it sounds like you have the background and knowledge to help many of our local businesses who are looking to learn more about how to set up a cottage industry or sell to the public at our local farmers markets. Let's get started with the interview. Today, we are going to hear about some of the most common questions that Patrick gets in his role when working with small businesses. Now to our first question. Where would a business go if they wanted to get a license to have a cottage food business permit, or what are the requirements for them to get approved for one?
Right. So with in the cottage food industry, all the products for that are regulated and approved on the wholesale scale. And the agency responsible for that is Washington State Department of Agriculture. So we do have quite a fair number of local producers here in the county that have their jams and jellies and baked goods approved for wholesale that you do see in some of our stores. And so for cottage food, the best bets go to the Washington State Department of Agriculture's website. They have really thorough information about the requirements. Kind of the big takeaway with cottage food is that again, it's for wholesale. So with getting the cottage food permit allows you to sell at farmers markets or even provide your product at stores or events without need of any additional requirements. I do a lot more with retail food, which is very specific to location, products being made on site. And so we do have a fair amount of people in the farmers markets that will produce their products day of on site. They have a list of, and there's always a list of requirements that they have to follow. They have to have hand washing. If their products are made off-site, it has to be done through a commissary kitchen, which is a kitchen already approved and regulated and inspected within the county. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that kind of goes into the next question that I had, which was, what is the difference between having the cottage food license and if I'm just a business who wants to sell my products at the farmers markets?
Right. So again, the big difference is wholesale versus retail. With cottage food, again, you can stock our local grocery stores with your products. With retail, again, you're only going to be limited to that particular farmer's market or temporary event. Again, with a farmer's market permit, everything has to be done on site or has to be done in an approved kitchen off-site.
What would I have to do to get my kitchen approved? So if I wanted to have a bake sale for my AAU basketball team and I wanted to sell my products at the farmer's market, what would I say, everybody come to my house and we all wash our hands? And how is that something that we involve public health in order to do that?
Well, with something like that, so kind of one of the big things with retail food is that kitchen can't be from home. So that can add a barrier for a lot of people. Oftentimes, if we do have local producers with the home kitchen, they often have to construct a second kitchen that meets all the requirements and have it set up in a way to where it's separate from their living spaces. And with cottage food, sometimes you can just have your residential kitchen get approved. But again, that is something you'd have to check with them. I think it really depends on the limitations on your particular permit.
Okay.
So things that I would look at for getting a kitchen approved locally for retail would be, you have to have 3-bay sink, hand washing sink, mop sinks, food preparation sinks. And again, it's all very much designed, the plan review process is designed particular to menu. So, a small sandwich shop, for instance, is going to need a lot less than your full-scale restaurant.
So if I get my permit to sell my product at a farmer's market, is there special packaging? Is there things that I need to do that public health requires to safely sell my products to the public?
Yeah, so if you apply for a temporary food establishment application through our office, that would cover you for farmers markets. There's a list of things that I will look at. You need to have a hand washing station on site, a way to wash your dishes. So oftentimes people will have access to an already approved location, and they'll take their dishes back there to wash, or they need to have ware washing on site. At least one person needs to have their food card. And if they're packaging and labeling in their products, it has to be done in a way that satisfies that particular requirement in the Washington State Retail Food Code. So your labeling needs to have the product name, ingredients list, net weight, and where it's produced.
Okay. Can you give us some examples of cottage industries or businesses that you work with through the farmers markets in our region that you see as successful, and what have they done that have made them so?
Well, we do have a fair amount of producers that I would think have been pretty successful with their products. We have a local cottage food bakery that I think they primarily provide their products for special events or pickup. I do see them pop up every now and then. And at a fair amount of farmers markets, I do see some people with jams and jellies that seem to be really popular as well. And yeah, they just have to have the right labeling, have proof of their licensing on them. And yeah.
When a business comes to you, or if an entity or an individual comes to you, is part of your process, do you require them to have a business license before you can give them a permit?
That's not really that's not really responsible for our office. They are required to have a business license, but that's through a different entity entirely. We do ask that they provide a copy during like a plan review process, and oftentimes people have already gone through the hoops and got their business license before they've come and talked to me.
Okay. We see a lot of businesses. So the Economic Alliance, we have the Small Business Development Center, and we also work with a lot of our small businesses within the county. And we see so many of our owner operators, especially post-COVID, more and more people, the owners are now the operators that are working in their businesses. And they're so focused on making their products and trying to prepare themselves to be able to sell their products, and they get frustrated by the hoops and government restrictions or regulations that they have to go through in order to get the permits just to be able to sell their products. Do you have any tips, tricks, or strategies that you can offer these businesses on the first steps to get started, to bring awareness to their business that isn't overwhelming, or simple things that they can do to help themselves prepare to submit that application so that it's not kicked back to them, or I had to go there 3 times before I got my permit process, just so that they know ahead of time what they need in order to proceed and to be successful in their permit?
Yeah, so I don't really have any firsthand knowledge of how people's experience have been with working with the Washington State Department of Ag. But when it comes to a plan review process with our office, there's usually a lot of back and forth conversations. Sometimes people have difficulties understanding some of the questions. And so if they simply just call and ask, I am more than happy to provide questions. And I usually get a lot of calls from people just wondering, oh, what are my first steps? Who do I need to go to? Again, contacting me is a really good step. I can usually line up people to go to where they need to go, depending on what they want to do.
What are some of the most common questions that when people do call you that you get?
You get a lot of questions regarding permitting requirements. So I'll get some vendors that will say, hey, I'm only doing prepackaged sodas. Do I need a permit? So that's really a big question that I get a lot. So for the most part, if it's prepackaged, commercially made, don't always require a permit. And there's a list of foods that are exempt from permitting. So that includes things like popcorn, which is also includes kettle corn, cotton candy, corn on the cob, whole roasted peppers, roasted peanuts, and another item would be like fruits and vegetables cut for sampling. So sometimes you'll go to a farmer's market and you'll see a vendor from a particular orchard providing fruit sampling. Those typically don't need permits. They are still required to follow the rules and make sure that their products are made in a sanitary manner. And I try to get people to contact me about what they're doing so I can provide them with a permit exemption permit. So.
And, one of the questions, that we get, and, we talked a little bit about this before we went live on Facebook, but, there's always a question about why. Why is public health require me to get a permit? And the discussion is more about public safety, consumer safety. Can you talk a little bit more about why these permits are necessary and why, businesses need to be aware of just the liability and the things that could potentially come up if we don't follow this process?
Right. Well, in the Washington State Retail Food Code, which is a nice big book of rules that I'm required to enforce and permit holders required to follow, that any sort of food service requires a permit. And, it's my responsibility to ensure that everyone is producing food, that the food they produce is done in a safe manner that complies with code, so that we really reduce the risk of people potentially getting ill at places. It can happen. Not everyone's perfect, but, having a clear understanding of those rules can really help a lot of people.
So do you have any places, or is there on your website, is there a location where small businesses or those who are interested in selling can go to find out more information about, whether or not what they want to sell is one of those foods that are exempt, or they're the ones that need to go through that process, or is it just best to just contact you directly?
Currently, it's best just to contact me directly. I have been working on some packets I could provide to the public, and perhaps, Ronnie, I could email you a list of things that you could have and provide to people as well. Our website is not great right now, and it's been going through a lot of changes, and we've been having to tweak it. So a lot of people have been having a rough time with our website, and so I just find it's best to have them contact me directly.
Okay. Well, I know you guys had totally had to switch gears in 2020 when COVID hit, and all of the different mandates and regulations that came down to restaurants and all of the businesses and everything, due to the phasing and all those types of things. So totally understandable that the website has been changing from totally focused on COVID, now coming back to trying to get back to business as usual. So I want to thank you for taking the time to be a part of our Business 101 interview with the experts. This is really important information. We have a lot of businesses who work out of their home. One question, I guess I want to, before we end this conversation, or before I ask your last question, we have a lot of ag or natural resource-based businesses, and some of them are looking at selling, whether it's beef or chicken or any of the meat. Is that, do those types of businesses come to you, or do they go to USDA?
They go to USDA. So in order to provide your product on a retail basis, your meat has to have that USDA authorization. I know that could be confusing for some people. A lot of people often think that, okay, well, I had my meat cut at this, custom cut shop. That isn't that good enough? And no, that's not the case, because the meat itself has to get approved by USDA. So if it's something that comes straight off your farm, if it's not USDA inspected, it will not, cannot be provided to the public. And that kind of ties into something else I usually will see at farmers markets is eggs. And so a lot of times people don't know that they need to have a egg handler's license with the state of Washington in order to provide their eggs at farmers markets or stores. And again, Washington State Department of Agriculture can help with those questions as well regarding how to get your eggs approved for sale.
Okay. Well, I know I was thinking, as I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, a lot of people dry their own meat, they make sausage, we have cattle businesses here that, want to cut their meat and sell. And I know I've been over the years to different ones where they've actually sold steaks and those types of things, but they always had to have that USDA stamp on it. So I just wanted to make sure we brought that up. The other one is honey. We have a lot of people within our area that sells honey. Is there any special requirements with that product?
Frankly, no. It's honey by itself is a really safe product. If your honey is, if you're not adding anything to it, if it's just straight honey, no additives, you just have to label it correctly. So you just got to make sure, have the producer location, net weight, ingredients, yeah, it's pretty, the regulations on honey is pretty limited.
Okay. Well, again, thank you so much for taking your time to be a part of this interview. And it's very important to our local businesses. Is there anything else that you would like to share with our audience?
Not necessarily that I can think of off the top of my head. I'm here at the office Tuesday through Fridays. You can give me a call at 509-422-7147, or you can send me an email. And I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
And what is your email address?
It is pdunn@co.okanogan.wa.us. Great.
Well, thank you so much. We are on Facebook Live, and I do not see any questions that have been added into our conversation. So I don't think we'll have to answer any of those today. But if you have a question, or if you are watching this after we are no longer live, again, feel free to reach out to myself or to Patrick directly to ask those questions, because, we want to make sure that, this process is as streamlined as possible to help our small businesses get their products that they're making out into the environment where they can sell, whether that's, at a farmer's market, or at a pop-up, or at some other event that's going on. It's always important to make sure that we follow those processes and make sure that we're providing safe food to the public. I also wanted to briefly mention that we are the Small Business Development Center. We also are the Small Business Technology and Resource Center, and we have different types of technology available to small businesses that we can check out. And we also offer free confidential one-on-one small business advising. Our next business expert interview is going to be with Roxanne Best, and we'll be speaking about the upcoming small business workshops that will be happening. We're going to be offering a small business 101 class, as well as a photography class on photographing your products, and then learning how to utilize your smartphone and other resources. So we look forward to speaking with you next week at 11:15 on May 31st. So thank you again so much for joining us today. And thank you, Patrick. I appreciate you taking that time.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you.